Man oh man, I love that iconic riff from 1983 by the great band The Fix, and how appropriate. We're gonna fix something today because one thing always leads to another. It is the responsibility of this broadcast company to give you the best information that is reasonably available. It has come to our attention by our preview group that a promise was made but was not kept. We made the statement in our previous video that we were going to fix something today because one thing leads to another. We were not able to fulfill that obligation by the time we released the video. So in good faith, we will start with the fixed product and then move through the process to which we were able to fix said product, that is a laptop. We understand that as a broadcasting company, we have responsibility to our viewers and to those who govern the broadcast transmissions. We would appreciate your acceptance of our apologies towards both parties.
This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcasting system. This is only a test.
Escape. I decided, since I let so many people down in the last video, that I would attempt to show you in reverse the coming together of the two laptops. I expect this to be another failure, but that is how I learn, unfortunately. This is my experiment, and you are my testers. So we saw the working laptop, half Packard Bell and half Zenith Data Systems. While some may consider this easy and boring, I think as you watch along, you'll see that everything, or almost nothing, went as it should. Surprisingly, there are a number of hurdles I had to overcome to make these laptops come together. So in keeping with the reverse order of things, I will show you the building of the battery pack. This, of course, happened after I shoehorned the Zenith motherboard into the Packard Bell case. I had two battery packs, one from the Packard Bell, which was cracked, and one from the Zenith Data Systems, which was not. The cracked Packard Bell battery pack had a good controller, but the Zenith Data Systems battery pack had a bad controller. I was going to replace the rechargeable batteries anyway, so all I needed was one good battery case, which came from the Zenith, one good charge controller, which came from the Packard Bell, and 12 1.2 rechargeable batteries adding up to 14.4 volts, which came from a certain place in China. The first thing I needed to do was to remove the top part of the battery case so I can access the batteries and electronics inside. I had tested removing the top on the old cracked case from the Packard Bell, so my experience level for this task was pretty high. Unfortunately, the battery case from the Zenith proved to be not so easy to get off, so I had to use some retro judo. I used power tools, pry bars, chains, and tractors, and eventually I was able to relieve the battery case of its top, mostly intact. Retro Judo. I emptied the Zenith battery case, checked out the charging controller once more, and set aside the batteries and controller because I was not going to use them. Next, I removed the charging controller from the bag case, did some prelim checks, and everything seemed to be copacetic. The original batteries, as you can see, were actually 2.4 volts per unit. I joined the two 1.2 volts batteries together in series by folding the ends together and then using tape to hold them together until I could actually hot glue everything together. Come on, people, now. Smile on your brother. Next I soldered, or I should say my wife soldered, the connectors between the batteries, and I finished up by soldering on the controller board, making sure everything was in series and I had at least 14.4 volts at the end. The final thing to do was to put the lid back on, glue it with some not so permanent glue, melt the corners with a soldering iron, and hold everything in place with carpenter clamps. This project is now done, at least the battery part. So this is the Zenith that I got in. Data systems. Today. This is the Packard Bell. As you can see, they're very similar. This is a bad case. See, it's broken here. But it has the good power distribution board. The good news about it is it did validate what I knew was probably wrong. So I know at least where to go with this. I can keep things the same and try to repair the case. Or this is a 486 over here. This Packard Bell's a 486-33, and this is a 386 SLC, like 20 or something like that. So it's quite a bit slower. So A, can this support that motherboard? It'll go in there. It'll go in just fine.
Yeah, but what's the voltage?
They're both 22 volts.
Then
Yeah. But hold on. This has the better LCD, right? But it has a bigger plug. That goes right here.
I see.
And actually, when I look at the LCDs, there's actually a little difference in the tint of the screen. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can see this on camera, but there's this is darker, this is a little more golden. And so that kind of leads me to believe, and with the bigger plug, that there might actually be some more things going on here. Now when I look here, I can see that there's room, a socket, for the bigger plug on the 486.
Right.
So
Can you take that plug and put it on the 486?
well, the problem is, if I do that, I don't know that the graphics chip that they have in there right now will support the additional things that that plug does.
But at that point in time, a lot of stuff were, what's the word, where it would go down.
Yeah, backward compatible.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
There
can
was a lot of
try.
backward compatibility.
I think the reason why this is a bigger plug is the reason, and it's a different screen look. I know this is the good screen. This is a bad screen. I already tried to fix it. I'm like, okay, I think what I'm going to end up doing is taking this motherboard out, putting it in the better case, keeping basically the Zenith data systems in a
Packard Bell case.
In a Packard Bell case, and then put this over there, and this can be my Frankenstein. But there's just, I think there's too much work in desoldering this and soldering it back into there, or trying to find another one of these connectors, and then only to find out that this actually won't work because it's missing a video chip addition. Matter of fact, you can see that there might be, those might be the display chips. So I think I'm gonna just leave the SLC alone and just move it over. And that way I have one complete computer, and then I can Frankenstein the other thing together once I figure out what the problem is with this board.
Okay, problem solved.
Yeah. Alright, well, let's see what happens. Let me just start removing stuff.
Cautiously, careful.
I began by removing the motherboards and noticed a few differences in the cases. One was where the math coprocessor was located, and the other difference was where the standoffs were inside the case. I wanted to try to preserve everything in case I needed to put things back the way they were. I carefully cut out the standoffs with a heated razor blade and removed some plastic bumpers so the Zenith motherboard would fit nicely in the case. This took several trial and error attempts until I finally got it right. Alright, so I'm going to take this razor blade, heat it up, and hopefully I'll be able to cut like that. Just cut that out. I'm just going to use propane. Propane and propane accessories.
Ah, dang it, Bobby.
Let's see. Broke out some of my mechanics tools today on this computer. I started life. Alright, let's get that nice power. Into cooler. That's interesting. Standoff looks like it may go a little deeper than I thought. Let's take a shot at this. Yeah, definitely is. Alright, let me cut around it at least. Hopefully that'll be enough to There we go. That was nice. Because of the minor differences in the motherboards on the respective aluminum trays, I had to keep the Zenith motherboard in its own tray and try to make it fit within the Packard Bell plastic case. It by no means was a perfect fit. I needed to do some stretching, cutting, pounding. All that was necessary to finally get it to sit correctly within the Packard Bell case. Once the motherboard was in place, it was time to do the first smoke test to see if during any of the prior, let's just say remodeling, if we perhaps created some shorts, breaks, or other types of issues. It didn't appear we did. The Zenith motherboard fired up just fine, and now it was time to determine what hard drive solution we're going to put in. Now my first intention was to use a CF IDE solution, but that did not work. Then I tried an SSD solution and that did not work. I used the DOS program called WhatIDE to determine the heads and the cylinders of both the SSD and the CF IDEs, and unfortunately, no matter how many times I changed the BIOS, it just would not work. It appeared that the BIOS was just too old. Therefore, I put in the Packard Bell's hard drive and left it at that. Since upgrading the BIOS is beyond my capabilities, because there is no regular EEPROM in this laptop motherboard. Unfortunately, I did not film the final assembly that you see here, but suffice to say that it all went together fairly easily once all the case mods were in place. It fired up as expected and the battery seemed to hold, well, at least for 20 minutes. I'll probably use different batteries next time, but it boots to DOS and then to my serial communications program I use to push files to old computers. I'll talk about that in the future. Nothing seems to be out of the ordinary other than from the top it's a Zenith and from the bottom it's a Packard Bell. Alright, let's see if I achieved what I wanted. First of all, I needed to fix the LCD screen. I did. I wanted to restore the case. Well, that I achieved, and of course I wanted to update the batteries, and I also wanted to update the LCD. I did that too. Not exactly the way I was planning, but it all came together. So let's take a look at this half Packard Bell and half Zenith Data Systems. Maybe we should call it the PAC-Zen. Well, the motherboard and keyboard came from the Zenith. The bottom case came from the Packard Bell. The LCD screen came from the Zenith. The battery case came from the Zenith, but the battery charge controller came from the Packard Bell. The power lights, buttons, and slider panel came from Packard Bell. The floppy came from the Zenith, and of course the hard drive came from the Packard Bell. So that brings us to the closing of this project. I'll be using the other motherboard and components on a different project coming up. Nothing will go to waste. Which reminds me, as we are working on these old vintage machines, let's remember that these are once important to someone. It provided, especially in the early 90s, a means of exploration and fascination, as well as being used as a tool for someone's livelihood. While we cannot save every old computer, we can remember the value that these machines brought to its users. The typing away at letters, the playing solitaire until the boss walked up, and of course the nighttime communications between friends. These are things I valued in my past and people value even in the current day. Now, are there things I would have done different? Yes. But the fact is I did something, and that's the point. Things can be done better by better people, no doubt, but for those of us who put ourselves out there to be praised or trolled, we must remember that if we do what we do with good intentions, then at least those who truly know us will appreciate what we have done. May your skies be wide and your love be bigger. God bless.